Every single AV receiver we've reviewed on this channel, even the best ones, have come with some type of caveat, some fine print in one form or another. Either they weren't true HDMI 2.1, or maybe they didn't have room correction or full preamp outs, built-in network capability. You get my point. No AV receiver has had it all, nor done it all, until maybe now. So let's see if the new ONKYO TX-RZ50 is the do-it-all AV receiver we have all been waiting for. The RZ50 is Onkyo's new 8K-capable 9-channel AV receiver with Dolby Atmos, DTS:X, and IMAX enhanced capability. It's also THX certified, and what that means is it's going to provide you with reference-level volumes similar to what you will experience in a commercial cinema. But on its own, the Onkyo boasts 9 channels of amplification, which are good for 120 watts per channel, albeit in stereo. Obviously, as you add more channels, the watts per channels drops. And if you're at all curious what that number is, so are we. The 9 channels can be configured in a variety of ways, up to 5.1.4 Dolby Atmos. But if you want more channels, the Onkyo has full processing and preamp outs for up to 11.2 channels, making a 7.2.4 Atmos setup possible when using third-party amplifiers. As for HDMI, the Onkyo is 8K60 and 4K 120 capable. The dual HDMI monitor outs are full bandwidth 40 gigabits per second spec, as are HDMI inputs 1 through 3. Inputs 4 through 6 are limited to the 24 gigabits per second spec. Now, legacy video signals can be processed and upscaled through the Onkyo as well. Of course, there's also eARC support. Another big feature of this smart AV receiver is the inclusion of DIRAC live room correction inside. The RZ50 actually comes with 2 types of room correction, DIRAC and Onkyo's own AccuEQ. Control is handled via the included remote or through the Onkyo controller app, which also has native support for a number of streaming music services like Tidal. The Onkyo is Roon ready, as well as compatible with Google Assistant, as well as Amazon Alexa. Truthfully, I could make a whole video just on the RZ50's specs and features, but in the spirit of time, if you want to know more, guess where you'll find that information? Down in the description. Setup is shockingly straightforward, especially for such a feature-rich device. All inputs, outputs, and speaker terminals are clearly labeled. And if you connect your loudspeakers and source components this way, I think you're going to find that the RZ50 is basically plug and play. Now, for more advanced control, you can customize your experience, either using the on-screen menus, the Onkyo Control app, or your web browser. Like the Onkyo 5100 we reviewed a few weeks ago, I set the RZ50 up using my laptop. All I had to do was type in the receiver's IP address, use the username and password CIuser, and I was good to go. This let me quickly get in and get out without needing to power up my TV or any other ancillary equipment. And once that was done, I made most of the day-to-day adjustments using the app, which I found to be excellent. Speaking of the app, I really liked its Tidal integration, and I found the experience identical to what I have enjoyed on the BlueOS platform and the Name app. So kudos to Onkyo, because with the exception of the Bluesound Power Node, all of the other products I'm referring to, such as the NAD M33, T778, and the Name Unity Atom, cost multiples more. And yet, at least when it comes to streaming music, they aren't necessarily providing for a different or better user experience. One of the biggest surprises during the initial setup was that using DIRAC required no additional hardware, microphones, or dongles. Onkyo gives you everything you need right in the box. Okay, you need to download the Control app to run DIRAC, but a free app is a far cry from needing to bust out a laptop, a half a dozen dongles, and you get the idea. Of course, if you want to use your laptop and a calibrated USB microphone, you can, but for most users, Onkyo's included microphone and the app will be all that you need. It's that simple. Now, DIRAC isn't perfect. It can be temperamental from time to time, especially when it comes to establishing your room's ambient noise floor or speaker levels, but this isn't necessarily the Onkyo's fault. The RZ50's implementation of DIRAC Live is hands down the best application of the software that I have encountered yet. Communication with the Control app is absolutely flawless, making the entire process of calibrating your speakers to your room nearly as painless as running Onkyo's own AccuEQ, only the results with DIRAC are far more dramatic. But here's where things get even better. After performing your initial calibration, you can go into the app and adjust your speaker's curve to your liking. I loved this because I don't always like what DIRAC does to my speaker's sound, and now I have the ability to make adjustments inside the app with the touch of a finger. This is very cool. Now, the RZ50 touts itself as being a next-gen receiver capable of accepting and passing both 8K60 and 4K 120 signals without workarounds or the headaches that plagued practically all AV receivers in 2020. In our tests, which included two TVs, the Samsung QN800A 8K QLED and our Vizio P-Series Quantum X, the RZ50 performed flawlessly. The catch being, there is no readily available 8K content on the market, and the PS5, while technically an 8K device, it does not output an 8K signal at this time, so all 8K viewing was upscaled and not native. But switching gears to 4K 120, games such as Call of Duty pass through without incident. No dropped frames or blackouts, even in HDR. Playing Spider-Man in its highest graphics settings, albeit limited to 60 frames per second, also resulted in no signal errors. Those of you who aren't gamers that just want to enjoy a movie or TV show in the highest possible quality, including in HDR, will be very well served by the Onkyo. Moving on to the Onkyo's sound. Now, whether we were set up for 2-channel listening or surround sound, which included ATMOS, the Onkyo is incredibly consistent across all of its sound modes and overall just very well balanced top to bottom. But let's go ahead and break it down, and let's start with the bass. Bass is obviously going to be dependent on two key factors, your speakers and whether or not you have a subwoofer. Now, we used our Monitor Audio Bronze 100s with the SVS 3000 micro subwoofer, and after running DIRAC, the performance down low was taut, deep, and detailed. Now, our room has some issues in the bass department, mainly boosts at certain frequencies, which can create a sense of there being a little bit more bass present or being output from any given speaker. With these peaks effectively flattened out, the presence of more bass did diminish, but we gained speed and detail as a result. I'm not saying that the Onkyo is light in bass, but rather that DIRAC is up to the task in maximizing your speaker's bass response in your room without needing to turn to room treatments. Switching gears to the HECO Aurora 700 towers proved to be a very interesting bass experiment. In this instance, I felt that DIRAC robbed the 700s of too much of their bass, and I preferred the sound of the speakers driven by the Onkyo without DIRAC. To get around my room's slight bass boost at 40 Hz, I simply pulled the HECOs out into my room a little, and I plugged one of their two rear-firing ports. Doing this gave me a far more linear response down low and proved that even without DIRAC, the Onkyo is capable of deep, dynamic, and resolute bass. But let's talk subwoofers. The Onkyo has two sub-outs, and depending on which website you're on, some list this receiver as a .1, whereas others will label it as a .2 capable device. It really is a .1 receiver because the two subwoofer outputs are not independent of each other. For some of you, this might be a really big deal. For me, it's a little less so, as I typically only use a single sub. But for you bass heads out there, I understand if this information is a little bit of a letdown. Shifting focus, the Onkyo's mid-range skews more neutral and in some instances may seem lean or cool if you're coming from the likes of an NAD, Denon, or Marantz receiver. Those receivers, at least in my experience, tend to have a little bit more body while being just a touch recessed. The Onkyo is actually more in line with the ROTEL 1580 Mark II we reviewed not too long ago. The ROTEL is a little better when it comes to mid-range clarity, especially when listening in 2-channel, but I wouldn't call the difference night and day. When watching movies, I doubt many would notice much of a difference at all. So you'll find a midband that is transparent to the source, largely colorless apart from your speaker's inherent sound, of course, and that is very intelligible with respect to dialogue or vocals. I really liked the Onkyo in terms of its vocal clarity. It is exceptional without needing to rely on digital dialogue enhancements, but if you need them, you're covered. In terms of high frequencies, the Onkyo is, again, very impressive. It's not as sweet or as effortlessly extended up top like the ROTEL, but it is spatially more open when compared to the sound of NAD. The Onkyo can produce a tremendous amount of detail from a speaker's tweeter, regardless of its makeup, and I was quite surprised by that. What I really liked was that the Onkyo didn't feel too forward. Its high-frequency performance sounded balanced with the rest of the amplifier's performance, providing solid sonic contrast that helped to give the amp an overall neutral, leaning vibe, rather than one that was warm, lush, or soft around the edges. In terms of soundstage, my God is the ONKYO good. First with music, especially in its pure music or direct sound modes, the 2-channel soundstage is next level. There's no getting around this receiver's spacious stereo image. Focus and definition throughout the soundstage isn't quite as good as the best on the market right now, but for a sub $1,500 receiver, it makes you wonder if it's really worth it to pay more. Is the ROTEL and the NAD T778 better in terms of absolute definition between your speakers? Yeah, but the ONKYO isn't exactly embarrassed by either of them. Now, when watching movies, there is no difference. Spatial cues are rendered with such precision and disregard for the physical boundaries of your room that Dolby Atmos mixed films like A Quiet Place 2 surrounded me. And it surrounded me at times even without my surround sound channels connected. Yeah, I'm talking about a 3.1 or 3.1.2 system. Movement across all speakers is seamless and crazy detailed. So those of you who are into games that are going to benefit from some measure of pinpoint accuracy in terms of surround sound should take special note of the ONKYO, because I found its surround sound performance to be solid. Dynamically, the ONKYO earns high marks for me as well, though I will admit you may have to turn it up just a little bit to get the full Monty. But when you do, man, it really only is bested by the ROTEL and is every bit the NAD's equal. The ONKYO drove our Monitor Audio Bronze series, the KLH Model 5s, HECO Aurora, and even the Polk Reserve speakers with ease. Now, we all know that when it comes to mass market receivers, power is going to drop as you add more channels. But with the ONKYO, I never noticed a drop in power. It always maintained control, giving our speakers enough juice for them to produce lightning-quick reflexes at every turn. The ONKYO RZ50 is something special, and for a receiver under $1,400, it definitely makes a case for why it should be seen as a benchmark in the space. In my experience, you have to pay way more to get appreciable differences in sound quality, and even then, those changes are going to be a matter of taste. Is the ONKYO the most musical or the best AV receiver for 2-channel purists at heart? No, that distinction still falls to the ROTEL in my opinion. But if the ROTEL is a 10 out of 10, the ONKYO is a solid 8 to a 9. Feature-wise, there are a few bells and whistles here and there that the ONKYO doesn't have that the competition might. For example, Oro 3D, which you can get on some DENON receivers. But then you don't get DIRAC with DENON, whereas with the RZ50 you do. So it's really a bit of a wash. In my time with it, this receiver has been nothing if not reliable. About the only thing that has misbehaved is the EARC connectivity, which I can't 100% attribute to the ONKYO. As any home theater enthusiast will tell you, HDMI, even in 2021, can be quirky. Over the past month or two, there have been a few instances where despite having a proper HDMI connection, I would get a picture but no sound when connected to my Vizio's HDMI port that also supports EARC. The reason why I can't say with certainty this is the fault of the ONKYO is because I have experienced the same phenomenon on other HDMI connected devices when using this TV. I've also experienced sound dropouts through our Apple TV 4K even before the ONKYO's arrival, so there are just too many variables for me to go, the ONKYO is to blame. A simple power cycle always remedied this, so I don't consider it to be a big deal, but it did happen more than once, so I'm mentioning it. Aside from that, the RZ50 is pretty damn flawless in my experience. As for comparisons, the ONKYO more than stacks up to the competition. In terms of absolute sound quality, the ROTEL 1580 Mark II is still going to be my pick for 2-channel in home theater so long as your surround sound needs are a little bit more simple. For example, a 5.1.2 or a 7.2 channel setup. I think the ONKYO is neck and neck with the NAD T778, with the differences in sound quality between the two likely coming down to your own personal taste. I admit the NAD's touchscreen is sexy and Blue OS is great, but the dongles, kill it for me when it comes to the NAD. The ONKYO wins over the NAD when it comes to functionality. See, it's not always about that touchscreen. As for how the ONKYO compares to the Denon and Marantz, this is going to be all about personal taste again, and likely even more about brand loyalty. We are still waiting on the more upmarket Denon receiver, so I'm going to withhold absolute judgment until one arrives. But like I said earlier, they're all about the same in terms of specs. Based on my time with the S960H, I'm going to go with the ONKYO because I really like DIRAC, and I really like the RZ50's use of it. But I totally understand if you feel differently and value something like Oro 3D more. As for less expensive options, well, there's always the ONKYO 5100, which, like the RZ50, offers up a lot in terms of performance and features compared to the competition. But let's not mince words. If you can stretch your budget and get the RZ50, you will be buying a receiver that is demonstrably better. I feel the same when comparing the RZ50 to even our Yamaha V6A, as good as I believe that receiver to be. In the end, the RZ50 is more than just a good receiver for the money. It's a great receiver, period. It may just be the new benchmark that I use to compare all other receivers to, regardless of their price. Yeah, you heard me right. I'm not saying that the RZ50 is the end-all be-all, but it makes me wonder, where does the law of diminishing returns really kick in? As of this review, I think the line is right here with the ONKYO. There are notable and appreciable differences in quality going from both the ONKYO 5100 or the Yamaha V6A to the RZ50, but there are far fewer when stepping up to the far costlier ROTEL or NAD. So at the end of the day, the RZ50 asks a question: how much is perfection really worth to you? Feel free to ponder that as long as you want, because in the meantime, I'm going to be enjoying the RZ50. So that's it. That is now my review of the ONKYO RZ50 AV receiver, but now it's time to find out what KRISTI thought of it.
Well, if you guys watched the 5100 review,
right,
and stuck around to the end and heard my little hint of what was coming and maybe why you should wait, now you know why.
Yeah.
The RZ50 is hands down way better than the 5100.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly,
it should.
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be. I mean, look, we all know that ONKYO clearly dug in the back of their storage room for that 5100 to put that out. I mean, frankly, I think they could have just skipped it altogether. But if you have the budget to step up, this is the one to get.
Yeah.
Without question.
Yeah.
And you know, I still think that the Yamaha V6A is a fantastic receiver. It does have the HDMI problems. Whether or not those are getting fixed or not, I'm not really sure what's up with that.
It appears that they're not going to be.
So if that's the case, I really don't see a reason in buying anything from 2020 at this point.
I don't either. Everything that came out in 2020 is getting patched or worked around with not real sexy solutions, you know, whether it's an outside box, you got to ship it in, get your board replaced, and then, you know, have that whole dance. I just think that now that 2021 models are on the market, if you bought a 2020 model, absolutely do everything that you can to get it up to spec and get the performance that you were promised and frankly you paid for. But if you're cross-shopping right now between like, ooh, a 2020 model might be a little bit cheaper, you're not saving money by going with the 2020 when there are now 2021 models that are proven to work. And the RZ is, I mean, yes, I get it. I get that, you know, $1,400, give or take, is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. But this particular receiver is so good that if you can stretch your budget from the $600-700 mark of some of these budget ones up to $1,400, not only are you getting a better receiver, but I think the ONKYO is every bit the equal of receivers that are costing $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 right now.
Yeah, I mean, as far as your point about your comparisons that you made with the ROTEL and the NAD, the ROTEL, we don't have it in-house anymore, and especially when it comes to amplifiers and receivers, unless there's a dramatic difference in the sound, it's very difficult for me to honestly say, yeah, this is better than that, without being able to directly A/B something.
Right.
It's just, speakers are completely different. I have a way easier time letting you know, okay, yeah, this is the one to go, at least from my perspective. With amps and receivers, that's, especially receivers, way more difficult.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at it from purely specs, the ROTEL, the 1580 MK, while I know I remember really liking it, and I like ROTEL products, it's a 4K only capable device. So when you're spending $3,000 or so, oh my God, $5,000?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at it from that perspective, really doesn't make a lot of sense to buy something that's limited to 4K, regardless I know whether or not there's any 8K content right now on the market.
Right.
Because there's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's only a matter of time. So I really feel like if you're buying ROTEL, it's more about the badge and saying you've got a ROTEL, or you're the type of person that you're never going to upgrade your TV and you're just not worried about it. And you really are heavily focused on having something that is going to be the best at both 2-channel and surround sound performance. Now, for me, I just don't think that, okay. Truthfully, I don't think the person that is completely musicality focused is buying a receiver anyway.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So at that point, if your content consumption really is 50-50 music and movies, this Onkyo is a great way to go. Absolutely.
And I'll contend that whether or not you want to use DIRAC or not, DIRAC is very helpful, and DIRAC operates in the stereo mode as well as all channel stereo and all of the other music modes. But if you're a purist at heart, if you're someone that's like, nope, I don't want any DSP, I don't want any room correction, the direct and pure audio modes of the Onkyo are fantastic. And they are neck and neck with the right speakers. They are neck and neck with the 2-channel performance of some integrateds in and around the same price point of the receiver. So you can kind of look at it from that standpoint, in that if you can get by with 120 watt per channel receiver, same as you maybe can get by a 75 watt or 100 watt per channel integrated, and your budget is still in that $1,500 realm, but you do like movies on occasion and things like that, the Onkyo is a far more versatile product. It just is. And one thing I didn't touch upon in the review, because we only have so much time, but the RZ50, unlike the 5100, does have a built-in moving magnet phono preamp. And it is actually pretty serviceable. I'm not going to say that it's the best. I'm not going to say that it's the best phono preamp I've even heard on a receiver. But if you're trying to build a hybrid system on a little bit more of a budget, you can totally get by with the RZ50's phono preamp. And the preamp's good enough with cartridges all the way up to the 2M blue, 2M black kind of level. So this RZ50 is incredibly hard to fault for me.
I agree with you, and I want to just be very clear about my opinions on the musicality of the Onkyo in a 2-channel listening standpoint. I really liked it.
Yeah.
It is as good to me as Yamaha, which I prefer Yamaha sound over just about anything. And when we're talking about receivers, especially, I really like that. So I thought the Onkyo was great. I definitely know I like the Onkyo sound better than what I've heard from Denon, at least so far.
Yeah.
So if I'm looking in between at those two, head to head, like if I'm going, well, do I want the Onkyo or do I want Denon? I'm going to get the Onkyo.
Yeah.
Just because based on what I've heard, I really like its sound. And I thought it sounded just as good as many integrated amplifiers we've had in house.
You want to
now
know?
You may flame me for that, but I'm just
I wouldn't, because you want an potentially unpopular opinion. In stereo, the only integrated amplifier that we have in house, besides my beloved Canner, which is $7,000, that's not in the question. Neither is the Deckware. Those are two products different. The only integrated amplifier that we have in house, where I was like, there's enough of a difference, or there's an appreciable difference in sound quality. It wasn't until the Musical Fidelity M5 SI did I hear something that I was like, okay, that's doing a little bit more than what the Onkyo can do. But everything else that we have in house, I'm talking the Cambridge AXR100, the Power Node, the XTZ amps, even the Emotiva TA1, There's one other one in there. I forget what it is. Anyway, the Onkyo, right in there in terms of sound quality in 2-channel mode. I was like, I don't feel the need. I can now just switch effortlessly between stereo and home theater with the Onkyo. I don't even need to worry about it.
Oh, speaking of the XTZ amplifiers, you connected those to the bronze 100s when we moved those to surround sound speakers.
Yes, to test the preamps.
Yeah. So just want to make a quick note about that. Like when we had, so we were watching Quiet Place 2 with the HECO Auroras up front.
Yep.
And we had the monitor bronze 100s as rears.
Yep.
Holy moly, guys. That, I don't know, first of all, if you haven't watched Quiet Place 2, it's really fun.
Yeah.
But there's like that opening.
The opening 12 minutes.
The opening few bits of that movie.
Yeah.
Dude, was so good. And even though I've seen that movie several times at this point, when we sat down and just watched that one front part of the movie for as an evaluation, I jumped out of my seat when those little
the creatures, whatever they are,
were literally on my left shoulder.
Yeah, breathing on you.
Breathing on me. And I was like, I'm not comfortable with this. It was really, really good.
Yeah.
So for movies,
forget about it.
Dude, great. Yeah, it was like being at the theater.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
No, I've had a great time with this.
It's a good piece.
Yeah, it is. They did a really good job.
Yeah.
Hats off.
Absolutely. So that's it. That is now our review of the ONKYO RZ50 Dolby Atmos AV receiver. Now it's time for you guys to tell us what you thought of it down in the comments below. And while you're down there, my question of the day for you is this. At what price point when it comes to AV receivers do you think the law of diminishing returns kicks in? Is it around where I think it kicks in with the RZ50, or is your level just a little bit higher? Let us know down in the comments below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and go ahead and ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that Kristi left for you down below, know that that is a great way that you have continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we do here, and both of us thank you very much for doing that. I want to call attention to a fundraiser that we will be doing or attaching to this channel. I haven't decided on which one that it is, but if you'll look up to I guess it's the right of your screen, you will have the opportunity to donate to causes that we are focused on helping the people in the South as well as the people in the Northeast that were just ravaged by weather this week. And I know our friends out west are dealing with fires. And so we haven't decided on which one yet, but we really are trying to find a solution that hits all three. But
not to mention what the ladies are dealing with here in Texas.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes. It's effed up. It's effed up, and
it's really hard to decide which charity we focus on this week because there's so many people.
There's so many people hurting right now, and so that's why I'm not calling it out by name, because as we're taping this, we haven't decided what we're going to do, but there will be a donate button on this video. Please click it. Please give what you can, because yes, a lot of people are hurting right now. And normally I would call it out by name, but like I said, we're still trying to decide. But please do that. Please join us in giving what you can to help those affected, not only by the crazy weather, the wildfires, but also the complete and utter injustice that has happened here in Texas. So anyway, that's it for us today. Follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile, and let's just close it out. The only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.